Now it's on paper, clear as day. President Trump's financial disclosure report was just released, and it shows his debt to personal attorney Michael Cohen. The financial disclosure was not in last year's report, and it acknowledged that Trump has repaid Cohen for expenses that the lawyer incurred during the 2016 presidential election. Now, what it didn't state explicitly is what the payments were for, like hush money paid to porn star Stormy Daniels. It did say how much, though, a value of between $101,000 and $250,000. And with me now, we have CNN national political reporter MJ Lee and CNN contributor Norm Eisen, who's a former Obama White House ethics czar. So MJ, to you first, catch us up here on what has just happened.
Well, Brianna, this is significant because we are seeing Donald Trump officially acknowledge in his financial disclosure form that he did, in fact, reimburse his personal attorney, Michael Cohen, sometime last year. Now, the big question heading into today or any day this week, whenever this disclosure form was going to come out, was whether he would decide to make that disclosure. And I want to point out that the OGE, the Office of Government Ethics, which is the agency that put this form out, said that they made the clear determination that the payment to Michael Cohen had to be reported. But if you read carefully, the language here says that from the Trump camp, that they did not believe that this was a payment that needed to be reported, but they are doing so anyway in the interest of transparency. Now, as you noted, the form doesn't specifically say what this reimbursement to Michael Cohen was for, but it does say what the range of the amount was, somewhere between $100,001 to $250,000. Now, the backstory, of course, which we're all very familiar with now, is that Michael Cohen paid Stormy Daniels, the adult film actress, $130,000 sometime in 2016 to keep her quiet about her alleged affair with Donald Trump. Now, the question, since this hush payment and the NDA, that story has come out, has been, did Trump himself ever pay back Michael Cohen? Now, we found out from Rudy Giuliani earlier this month that he did, in fact, do so. But one quick thing I'll note about what Rudy Giuliani said, this is a good reminder. He said subsequently that President Trump actually paid Michael Cohen back for a much bigger amount than $130,000. He estimated that it was actually somewhere between $460,000 and $470,000. So if that is the case, I think there are questions about whether this report today is an underreporting and whether there are going to be more disclosures coming in the future.
And Norm, when you look at this, is this a violation to you?
Brianna, thanks for having me back. I think it does raise very serious questions about whether Donald Trump has committed a violation of his ethics requirements under federal law and of 18 U.S.C. 1001, the federal false statement statutes. That's because last year's disclosures by Mr. Trump did not contain this information. And of course, there's been a big public discussion once the Stormy hush payment came out, once Mr. Giuliani admitted that there was a repayment, whether it should have been on there. And now we see an admission tacit admission that it should have been. And at the same time as OGE Director Dave Apol certified the president's statement, he signed the president's statement, he sent a referral, a letter to Rod Rosenstein at the Department of Justice, providing last year's form with the missing information. So there's a DOJ referral in the mix now. I think the president may be facing some very serious potential liability for last year's omission.
Is he off the hook at all, Norm, because the word from his team is that he didn't know what this is for?
Brianna, that's just silly. Donald Trump once won a contest run by Spy Magazine for the world's cheapest celebrity. They kept sending him smaller and smaller checks. He cashed one for 13 cents. Do you really believe that he would pay Michael Cohen, Giuliani says, $35,000 a month over a period of months, not knowing what it's for? That dog won't hunt. It is implausible, and I think that's part of the reason that the Office of Government Ethics has taken the extraordinary step, I don't believe it's ever happened before in American history, that a president's financial disclosures have been transmitted, that there's been a referral to the Department of Justice. This year's with the information, last year's signed by Donald Trump under false statements penalty, potentially a felony under federal law, 18 U.S.C. 1001. Both of those have been sent to Rod Rosenstein for examination.
All right, Norm Eisen, thank you so much, MJ Lee. Really appreciate the reporting. And now to the biggest document release yet on the most infamous meeting known as part of the Russia investigation. Nearly 2,000 pages of transcripts released by the Senate Judiciary Committee that give new details on the 2016 meeting inside of Trump Tower, which involved Donald Trump's eldest son, his then campaign chairman, his son-in-law Jared Kushner, and several Russian nationals. And the testimony from those at the meeting shows how eager Donald Trump Jr. and Trump campaign members were to get dirt on Hillary Clinton. But the transcripts also show how frustrated they became when that did not pan out. Just take this excerpt from Rob Goldstone, who is the middleman who connected the Trump camp with the Russians. Goldstone describes his thoughts sitting in the meeting. He said, "I was waiting. If there was some smoking gun, which is why I had been I was waiting if there was some smoking gun, which is why I had been asked to do this. After a few minutes of this labored presentation, Jared Kushner, who is sitting next to me, appeared somewhat agitated by this and said, 'I really have no idea what you're talking about. Could you please focus a bit more and maybe just start again?' And I recall that she, meaning the Russian lawyer, Natalia Valetskaya, began the presentation exactly where she had begun it last time, almost word for word, which seemed by his body language to infuriate him even more." And what do the documents say about President Trump's involvement? Well, Donald Jr. told Senate investigators that he did not tell his father of the meeting, nor did they discuss the response to reporters after the meeting became known. But listen to this exchange that Donald Jr. had with a Senate investigator about his July 8th statement saying the meeting was about Russian adoptions. It says, quote, here's the question. "To the best of your knowledge, did the president provide any edits to the statement or other input?" And Trump Jr. says, quote, "He may have commented through Hope Hicks." Joining me now is CNN's Tom Foreman. And before we get to the analysis, remind us about the emerging storyline about who knew what and when, Tom.
Yeah, well, this meeting at Trump Tower happened in June 2016, 5 months before the election. And these are the American members of the Trump team who were there. And here are the Russians. And this is the guy who set it up, Rob Goldstone, a music promoter who had friends in both camps. He's the one who exchanged notes with Donald Trump Jr., promising this meeting, which would involve Natalia Veselnitskaya, would bring information that would incriminate Hillary and her dealings with Russia, part of Russia and its government's support for Mr. Trump, meaning his candidate, his father, candidate Donald Trump. Donald Jr. replied, "If it's what you say, I love it." But in the actual meeting, Don Jr. says the information specifically from Natalia Veselnitskaya was useless. Her statements were vague, ambiguous, and made no sense. And the new documents support the idea that he quickly grew irritated, bored, and eager to get the meeting over with, saying nothing incriminating about candidate Clinton was discussed, Brianna.
And Tom, the key question seems to still be, did the candidate, Donald Trump, know anything about all of this? Do we have a sense of that?
Well, so far, these documents seem to support the idea that over and over again, people who were in the meeting said candidate Trump knew nothing about it. But I don't imagine that will quiet the skeptics, because remember, Don Jr., back before all these details were known, denied pretty much everything to the New York Times, saying, "Did I meet with people that were Russian? I'm sure I did, but none that were set up, and certainly none that I was representing the campaign in any way, shape, or form." Brianna?